Alright, it's time for session number 18 of Adobe Illustrator, and again it's another set of t-shirt tricks as we get ready to design some t-shirts. So I'm going to hop over here to Illustrator, and today you're going to start with a artboard that just looks like this, 4 things listed on it, but it's going to wind up looking something like this, except you'll have your own input on exactly what you do here on these. But there are some text tricks that again are very common in t-shirt design, and I would like for you to know how to do these. So let's take a look. Let's have at it. I'm going to pull these text items kind of off to the left hand side here and give me more space on the artboard. The first one is just text converted to outlines. Okay, well, first of all, you got to make some type here, so I'm just going to take the regular type tool, and on this first example I'm just going to use USA. All right, now you can do this with any, on this assignment especially today, you can do it with any school appropriate text that you decide you want to use. Now I want to use kind of a thick and bold font here, so I'm going to switch this to, I know that impact is real thick. I know that this Arial, and if you set the style on black, Arial black is real thick, and that's looking pretty good to me, kind of peeking back at some of my ideas that I had earlier. Okay, now I've got this text, USA. I'm going to go ahead and kind of dress it up a little bit here. It's colored black, and I'm going to make it a blue color. And I think I'll stroke it in red. I'm just working on getting that stroke set up the way I want. Not that dark. And maybe bump the stroke up a little bit so it's a little thicker. Alright, so I've got the text kind of set up the way I want. Alright. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the type tool. I'm going to use a trick called create outlines. Alright, I'm just going to convert it to what's called outlines. As soon as you do this, this is not really type anymore. I could no longer take the type tool and edit this as type. This has been turned into 3 shapes that they're just shapes. They're like a square, a rectangle, or a star, or whatever. They're just shapes. They're just shapes that happen to be shaped like letters. Now, I'm going to right click this and ungroup these, because type that's been converted to outlines is going to be grouped together. So I'm going to right click and ungroup, and then when I deselect this, you'll find that these are separate shapes, and they're shaped just like the letters USA. Alright, well that means you have a lot of options. If they're shapes and they're separate, you can arrange them however you want, or you can even do this kind of thing where I could put them in kind of a diagonal arrangement like this and make sure that they overlap just a smidge. They don't have to overlap a lot. And when you do yours today, you don't have to do it just like this, but I'm just showing you the possibilities. Alright, so I kind of got them overlapping a little bit, and I could select them all, and I could go up to Window and get the Pathfinder, and pull the Pathfinder over here. I could do a Unite, and since those are shapes, now what I wind up with is these 3 combined letters, and where the overlap has just kind of been combined there, and this is now one shape because I united them, and I would be able to fill that with, you know, a gradient or whatever color I want, and it makes kind of a cool, you know, like a front of a t-shirt or a logo kind of thing that you know, it's just a good trick. All right. So there's that one. Okay, now I'm going to move on to this text field with a gradient. So this time I'm going to use my caps lock, and the text is going to say Nike, like that. All right, and again, just for speed's sake, I'm just going to keep this Arial black kind of thing working here. Whoops, didn't mean to make it quite that big and get everything. I'll do a Control-0 to get that centered back up, and maybe make it a little bit bigger like this. Alright, now this whole idea of filling with a gradient, you know, if I go to the swatches panel and I go to open a swatch library and I go get a gradient, and gradients, and I'll just do, it doesn't matter, I'll just do some color combinations here. Alright. Now, if I get, I get the fill box up here and I go to put a gradient on some letters, and see, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Okay. So even, down here below the fill and stroke, there's a box here for gradient, and if I click that, it's still not, it's not filling it with a gradient. It's not working. All right. So there must be another step, and there is. It's the whole thing we just did. If I go to the type menu and I create outlines first, then I can take this gradient, and I'm just using this black and white gradient. If you look at the fill box and right below there, that middle button, you can just turn on a gradient there. And I'm using that gradient, this is that black and white gradient. All right, now there is, if you want to adjust the gradient a little bit, over here on the right hand side, there's a gradient panel. And you can control some things, like right now this is a linear gradient, but I could change it to radial if I wanted to. You see what that does. And notice the gradient won't work until you convert it to outlines. But I'm going to put that back on linear, and I'm going to play with the angle of it here. Let's do it at like a 90-degree angle. And see, I like that a little bit better because it starts white and it goes up to black. And you can adjust these sliders on here if you want to kind of tweak the gradient a little bit. You can kind of adjust those and make them, you know, a little bit different. Now look how this is going to look when I deselect it. I kind of like this on a white artboard. It looks like those letters are just fading away as they go down. They just kind of fade right into the artboard. That's just kind of a little extra added bonus there. All right, now I'm not going to ungroup those. You could ungroup them, but I'm just going to leave them like that. The thing I wanted to show you is that you cannot fill text with a gradient until you do that type and convert to outlines. All right, moving on here. The double stroked text. Okay, well, I'm going to create some text here, and I'm going to check my colors that I did. Okay, I'm going to create some text first of all, and I'm going to use Oregon as an example, and I'm going to make that nice and big. Okay, again, I could change the font if I wanted to, but just for the sake of time and speed, I'm just going to keep this Arial black font and just keep going here. Now, I think what I'll do is fill that, and again, I'm going to check my colors. My brain's not completely working here. I'm going to fill that with a green color. I want kind of a dark green. All right, so I'll go with that, and I'm going to stroke it. I want to outline it with a gold or a yellow. Oregon's main colors are kind of green and gold. All right, I'm going to bump the thickness of that stroke up a little bit. All right, so here's what I've got right now. I've got this green text with a gold outline, and it looks pretty good. It doesn't look bad. But I want to give it the effect of a double stroke. And if you look at shirts and stuff, you're going to see this. There's all kinds of shirts that have a double stroke on the text. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but here's what I'm going to do on it. I'm going to Alt-drag this text to make a copy of it. And I'm going to set this second copy up with all black. Now, it could be whatever color you wanted, but I'm going to fill it with black, and I'm going to stroke it with black. And I'm actually going to beef up the thickness of that stroke a little bit. And you're going to see the letters kind of begin to run together, and it doesn't look all that good right now. All right, so I've got two copies of this thing. One all black, and then the other one is the colors that I just, you know, the green and the gold that I want to use. Well, you're going to see where I'm going with this. I'm going to kind of move this on top of there. And it doesn't look good right now, but if I take this black set and go to Arrange and go to Send to Back, and then I just kind of, I'm nudging with my arrow keys on my keyboard is what I'm doing. I'm just using the up arrow, right arrow, left arrow. And you see what I get now as I nudge that into place. There's that double stroked look. You've got a green letter that has a yellow stroke, and then you can see the black stroke going around it too, and that looks pretty cool. It really kind of sets it off a little bit. It makes it look even better than what it did before. Now, if you're going to do something like that and they're two separate objects, again, my advice is always select them and group them. And that way, if you're going to move this text around or do anything to it here, that double stroke effect is just going to stick with you. Now, that's not the only way to double stroke text in Illustrator, but that is a way to do it, and it's a pretty good way to do it, if you ask me. All right, one more to go. Text with a shadow. All right, on this one, I'm going to use my caps lock, and I'll say Indiana, press Enter, and Hoosiers. All right, I'm going to select that text and with the black arrow, and I'm going to make it larger like this. And up on the control panel up at the top, when you have text selected, you'll see some buttons for left, center, and right align. So I'm going to center that, and what it does is just kind of center Indiana Hoosiers right over top of each other. Looks a little bit better, I think. Now I'm going to fill this with red. kind of a crimson if I can get it. There we go. That's more like a crimson color. All right. Looks pretty good. And this is going to be really kind of similar to the double stroke text, but a little bit different. I'm not going to put an outline on that text. I just got red. I could, but I'm not. I just got red text. So I'm going to alt drag this. And the second copy of this, I've got 2 copies of Indiana Hoosiers here. Again, I'm just going to make it black. All right, I'm going to bring it here and kind of lay it in, and I'm going to right click and arrange and send to back. And now, and this is where you can use the arrow keys on the keyboard. You can nudge up, left, whatever, however you want, and you can make this shadow be offset as much as you want. If you want a real kind of deep offset, you can do that kind of thing right there. Or if you want a little less noticeable, you can do that kind of thing where the the black letters are not offset quite as much. But you can tell that there's a shadow kind of behind the Indiana Hoosiers text there. All right, and again, this is one where you got 2 separate objects, so if you're going to do much moving around with this, I would select them both like that and go to Object and go to Group, and then that holds those 2 text objects together. All right, so these are really good tricks to work with when you're doing like t-shirt design. That whole converting to outlines, and you can move the letters around. When you convert to outlines, you can fill with a gradient. This double stroked text idea, pretty good idea, works well. And then this shadow idea is very similar to the double stroke, but a little bit different. So when you get something like this made today, that's good. You've got it. And we're gearing up for t-shirt design. All right. Hey, have at it. Off you go.